Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to the Mine World podcast. This is, of course, the podcast where we talk about everything new and innovative in the natural resources industry with a specific focus on digital transformation. And as we get started, as always, allow me a quick shout out. Thank you, as always, to MineRP, the sponsor of the Mine World podcast. MineRP is a mining software company specializing in enterprise interoperability. And that basically means that they make everyone on the mine work together better. MineRP is part of the Epiroc Digital Solutions portfolio, where we help mines accelerate their journey towards digitally enabled excellence in mine planning, scheduling, and operational execution. So for more information about either Epiroc or MineRP, you can just visit www.epiroc.com or .minerp.com. Any one of those two will get you there. So, on then to today's discussion. And today we've got another discussion that touches on understanding more of what's going on in operations and reconciling between what we have planned to do and what we are actually doing, with a bit of collision avoidance and so on in the mix as well. We've had a few episodes about that, and we've got one or two more coming. So very interesting that we are talking about a few different approaches to this world. And today, I've got with me Adriaan Goosen from a German company called Indurad. Adriaan, welcome to the Mine World podcast.
Good morning, MP, and thank you for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, so Adriaan, just very quickly, tell me about your current role. What is your role within Indurad? And then take 10 seconds and just introduce Indurad quickly.
Thank you, MP. Yes, my title is Director of Engineering globally for Indurad. I'm based in Montreal, Canada. And Indurad is a company that designs, manufactures, and install radar-based solutions for clients. And I think through the discussion, we'll talk about a lot more about what we actually do to help clients.
That's right. You are a mechanical engineer by background, I should say. Is that right?
That's correct, and please don't keep it against me, especially when talking about the digital journey of companies.
Well, no one working for a company like Epiroc will keep something like being a mechanical engineer against you. Believe me. Of course, Adriaan, your background spans much more than maintenance and mechanical issues. How did it work that you became involved with a digital company and with digital kinds of solutions? So tell us a little bit more about your background.
Okay, long background. I think my background spans about 27 years, specifically in the mining industry. Started in 1992 as a bursary student for the old E-Score, which later became Kumba Resources and then was taken over by Anglo. And there was a split, and I stayed over on the Exxaro side. But so I've been most of my career in the mining industry, and that covered literally from underground mining, open cast mining, the plants. I was part of the research and development department, and yeah, eventually I met Indurad both when they did a project for us at Exxaro Resources on a loadout station project, and I visited them in Germany to look at some of the other solutions, and that's where the discussion started between me and them, because I became extremely excited about what they're doing around the world.
So Indurad used to be a partner to your previous employer.
That's correct, MP.
Oh, that's interesting. And for those, well, I guess that's probably just about everyone listening to this podcast. Adriaan and I are also friends. We've been friends from, I don't know, from when we were 14, 15, 16, thereabouts, isn't it, Adriaan? That's long, long, long ago.
Yeah, now we're starting to give our ages away.
Yeah, we were in school together and then university together, and actually also family friends since then. So it's great to have also had a parallel career in the mining industry. That's always interesting and a nice way to keep in touch. So on that topic, I remember you always building stuff and being the typical engineer. But why digital solutions? I mean, when did you get involved? I mean, my background is in computer software, in development. So, of course, I've got a bit of a kind of a natural inclination towards digital stuff. Why did you get involved in digital specifically?
Um, MP, there's definitely a personal interest combined with some of my previous responsibility within Exaro. I think in general, I'm maybe a little bit more of a big picture thinker. I like to see how things fit. Although I obviously take responsibility for my position and my role, I normally enjoy actually seeing and understanding how everything, like typically in a watch, fits together and how it works to get an end result. And within Exara, I was also over many, many years responsible and formed part of projects that where we implemented ERP systems. So I was part of three of the SAP deployments and redeployments within the company, and I was also um, the client leader for some of the streams, which covered not just the engineering but also procurement or interfacing with procurement, with HR, with finances, and various other departments. And that's where I really started. Things like the digital twin that a lot of companies and people are talking about these days, things started falling into place and starting becoming much more of an interest. And it's something that I could enjoy as a responsibility within the company as well,
Mm,
to
mm.
merge sort of this own interest together with what the company's expectations were towards
Right.
me.
Yeah. And then you eventually, as you said, after Exaro became involved with Indurad, and now you're not a South African anymore, and you live in Canada.
Yeah, correct. It was an interesting journey. What happened was 2019, just before COVID started impacting our lives,
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of consecutive world trips or trips specifically to Asia and to Europe to inspect equipment, to look at technologies, to negotiate contracts and engaging discussions specifically from technical point of view with various OEMs.
Hmm.
And what happened was we then also visited Indurad as part of a specific visit to Germany and the Netherlands. And I had a very limited view of what Indurad was doing, specifically purely based on my exposure within Exaro.
Right.
And after spending some time with them and actually driving around with their CEO Reich Winkel and seeing the massive impact that they're making to clients, positive impact, I invited them to attend an engineering conference that I organized in South Africa. And after the conference, we had some discussions, and a couple of months later, we started with our discussions. And I said to Reich, I would really like to join their company because of all the phenomenal work that they're doing to make people's lives so much better at mines, to make it safer, to make it more productive. Yeah, so I joined Indrat. I had the privilege of spending a year or just over a year in Germany at the head office in Aachen. While all of our documentation and paperwork were put in place for us as a family to move to Canada. And I think it's about by the end of this week, we would be 1 year in Canada. And as we previously said, we stay in Montreal, Quebec province, and we absolutely love it there.
Well, that sounds great. So, you've had the benefit of looking at the kinds of technical mining problems from both the perspective of a client, a big international mining company, as well as, of course, now one of the vendor companies that provide solutions into that domain. From your perspective, then, and of course, within this ambit that we're discussing, what are some of the major business problems that you see that you guys are solving for the industry, or even beyond you guys, that you see that industry are grappling with?
MP, I think that's an extremely relevant question because during all my discussions and visits to different mining companies, all of your um, executives are typically talking and putting strategies in place for a digital journey, implementing or following what they call a mining 4.0 or industry 4.0. And there's a lot of lingo that's been thrown around in the passages and in discussions and presentations. But the actual implementation of that is not always that clear. And every company that we speak to have got sort of their own view of what the mine of the future looks like. Apart from the fact that everybody's got their sort of own view and trying to put all of these new ideas and concepts together, one of the big challenges that we see that companies have is having your infrastructure and all of your equipment in a sort of digital environment is fairly easy. There's some challenges, but I think there's a lot of extremely good progress being made, and people are really starting to get a hold on to representing, all of infrastructure and equipment. But the challenge becomes especially when we start talking about inventory.
You talking product inventory, right?
Yeah, thank you for that, MPS. Product inventory, because that's the life. That's why you mine, is to get the product out. Okay, how do you digitalize that? How do you get a real time impression of what do I have, what's coming, what's being produced and being sold to the clients?
So, okay, that's a big one. So, firstly, getting a kind of control of your information, and secondly, with a specific view on understanding what you have and where it is in the inventory management process. I find that lots of mines start using the term mine to demand or mine to market, in which they want to understand, well, if the market wants X, where should I be mining? What should I be mining? How much do I have in process? What's on my stockpiles? Where am I reclaiming from? Etc. Etc. So that's some of the work that you do, right?
That's correct. I think we can help clients definitely to be a lot more flexible to address the needs and the demands of the clients, and especially the changes that we see globally in terms of expectations on your commodities. Also, what we see is there's a lot of mining companies that every single year when they bring out their financial results, either they have to compensate positively or negatively on their balance sheet because of incorrect inventory reporting. And that's got a massive impact financially on companies.
I don't know if you know, but I'm a co-patentee of a patent here at MineRP called geo-inventory, in which we have also patented a system and approach that actually speaks to this very problem domain. And there are lots of different ways of reconciling and so on. Of course, many international standards speak to this as well. But the accuracy of measuring actual inventory and the latency of getting that information to a place that you can actually reconcile and add up, etc. This is not something that everyone understands very well. So I guess one of the challenges is to get that real time, or whatever the appropriate timing interval is, of accurate information from the production equipment and processes. And for this, many people throw around the term digital twin. We've got to have a digital twin of machines and digital twin of ore flow and digital twin of this and that. How would you define a digital twin?
Um, MP, I would most probably, without going to like a Wikipedia or something, just practically what it means for me and what I see the benefit for clients. It's to have a digital representation of your operations. And that means your entire operations, so that you can use new technologies like, for instance, artificial intelligence, like machine learning, optimizing without making any changes within your actual operations, simulating what you have, looking and seeing if I should make changes, if different quality of blocks should be coming in, if there's changes from a client quality requirements or so, how can I best optimize my mining, my beneficiation, my stacking and delivering to the client? So a digital twin really gives you that advantage that without making any changes, physical changes, you can run a lot of simulations, different scenarios, play different scenarios off against each other, and see how you then can optimally mine or produce, sort of what would be the best result for the mine, delivering to what the clients are looking for.
Okay, so then let's talk about how we get all of that information together. That then becomes the digital twin that represents the physical reality. Indurad has a very specific approach, and I guess the name gives it away, doesn't it? What is unique to Indurad in its approach to understanding reality?
You're correct in terms of Indurad gives it away. Indurad stands for industrial radar. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, we design and manufacture our own radar based sensor and equipment, technology and solutions, and we use radar specifically in industries that are known to have harsh conditions, of which mining is typically the one that would be first coming to mind, but we're also quite big in terms of supporting ports and terminals, smelters, refineries, and various other industries that also struggle with harsh conditions. And
And if you say harsh conditions, you mean what?
to harsh conditions for us means typically dust, snow, rain, fog, mist, um, and these are typically things that you experience in mining industries, especially if you start talking about mist spray for dust suppression, and as I said now, dust as well. That creates a lot of challenges for various technologies or types of equipment out in the industry.
Right. So many people will be well aware of technologies such as everything from Boston Dynamics Spot, that yellow dog that does lidar surveying, to the progress in drone-based surveying and so on. And most of those technologies are lidar-based, or um, light detection and ranging, for a lack of a better word. And then, of course, radar is radio detection and ranging. So why go down the route of radar instead of lidar if there seems to be such a lot of development in the lidar world, and even the vidar world, of video detection and ranging? If you think of what a Tesla does while it's driving.
No, that's correct. Um, And even the example that you use with Tesla, even if you've got optic, you always have the challenge that, let's say there's fog, um, you can't physically see through it, and that's why even with automation, uh, the automotive industry, they always use radar in parallel with other types of technology. And the reason why they use radar is just to get a little bit more into the technical side. If you take, for instance, laser have got a wavelength of typically in the region of 1 micron, where radar have got a wavelength of 4 millimeters. So that means that
Wow.
almost all particles in harsh conditions, typically with dust,
Mm-hmm.
okay, which we experience in mines and so forth, are larger than the laser wavelength, which means that the radar can actually see through it because the wavelengths bend around or go around your dust particles,
Right.
and therefore you can see through it. And that's why I think there's, depending on what type of application, what conditions, there's
Yeah.
always a need for lidar. We use lidar as well to do typically surveys of machines after we've done our installation of our radar equipment, to see exactly where they've been installed, to make a 3D model, a digital twin of that equipment, so that we can start doing the automation, the simulating, how the equipment should be controlled. So there we use lidar ourselves as well. Well, we don't have our own lidar, but we get companies to do the survey. But the moment the production starts and you start experiencing all of that dust, that's when you start need really need the radar to be able to see through all of that dust.
Okay, so clearly, again, and I think you mentioned it earlier, it depends on the application. The right technology depends on what you want to do with it. Um, so, what are some of the specific problems that you apply your radar-based solutions to?
Sure. I think before I can answer you, MP, just to get a little bit better understanding again of radar,
Mm,
and I need to explain that specifically when I give then examples where we use radar. It's not just limited to the type of solutions that we have, because you can use radar in a lot of applications, and we actually have various projects globally with various mining companies where they use our radar sensors together with our software engineering teams and their automation teams to actually develop solutions or customize solutions specifically sometimes for their application. To get back to the point, to understand radar. Radar, different to, as an example, laser, where laser is a single beam. Radar have got almost like a conical, if a conical sending out of your radar waves, and
Yeah.
you can with a single radar beam. Okay, so you need to think about it, as I said, in a conical way, and the size
Like a flashlight.
like a flashlight, and the diameter
Yeah.
of that depends on the antenna, your radar antenna. But that single beam you can use to measure angle, distance, direction, presence, movement, and velocity. Okay,
Hmm.
so anywhere where there's an application, whether it's a 1D, 2D, or 3D type of measurement, combining that with, I'm trying to measure not just distance, but an angle to a specific piece of equipment or to a person, to whatever it might be, you can do with a single source of radar. So then, to answer your question, if you understand that, is typical things that we do for clients is we've got some solutions called, and pardon the I in front of it, we just brand it as I belt because it's Indurad belt technology, where we measure the volumetric flow of material on conveyor belts. We measure misalignment of your conveyor belts. We And that's a combination of a 2D sensor with a Doppler velocity radar, which is also designed and manufactured by ourselves. And then we've got
Right.
solutions where we do, and then I'm going to get back to the volumetric measurement of, for instance, stockpiles, where we do 3D scanning of stockpiles, silos,
Mm.
domes, above apron feeders, to protect your apron feeders and to know what volume you put through your apron feeders.
And this is, of course, typically a very high dust
That's an extremely high
environment.
dust environment, yes. Clients typically install our radar sensors under grizzlies where you typically have tipping bins. And you can just imagine, well, coming yourself also having been a lot at mines, knowing the mining industry, the amount of dust that you typically generate within your tipping bins, above your apron feeders, through chutes, are significant. And there is no other technology that really works effective in that type of environment.
So essentially, as you said, everything from understanding where things are uh, and uh, and whether things are there to the change in position and the change in size and the change in speed and so on. These are things that you can do with radar in as you said earlier, unfriendly conditions.
Maybe just another Maybe just another example, MP, would be you talked about size. What we also do is we've got a solution that where we help clients to detect or to be more proactive in detecting blockages within your crushers. So if you typically have primary crushers, gyrated crushers also, our radars can actually see large pieces of rock that could cause a blockage.
Okay, so fragmentation you can also help detect.
Well, I wouldn't say fragmentation because that's getting very granular. But if it's large material that would typically block a crusher, that's a lot larger than your typical other granular distribution and of the material that's going through your crusher.
Wow. So stockyard management, stockpile management, reclaiming, mixing, blending, getting the grade right for the processing environment. This must be something that you specialize in.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. Yes, we've got projects globally with almost all mining companies, and all the tier one mining companies around the globe, where we actually help them on each one of those points that you typically mentioned now.
Now, this sounds great, and I mean, having seen some of the work that you do, I know that it is as well. But I always wonder when I look at these wonderful technologies, why isn't everyone just using it then? So what are some of the barriers that you think that mines run into trying to implement these kinds of technologies? Not only specifically Indurad, but the kinds of technologies that you're describing.
Um, I think if you talk about barriers, I think to a large extent there's sometimes just purely a lack of knowledge and understanding what technology to use for which application. There's so many products around the globe available. There's so many salesmen walking around trying to sell their product. Okay, so that's typically some of the I can almost say barriers that we see at clients where if they have not yet developed a standard to guide and to assist the project staff or their maintenance staff, so to make a good selection of and combination of different technologies, that's definitely a barrier almost to making sure that they actually get the right results.
Sometimes, with digital types of projects, we find that lack of knowledge, lack of training, change management, time to value, etc., is a problem for mines. How long does it take? From I've got a stockpile that needs to be measured, monitored, and modeled. If I were to call the Indurad number, how long does it typically take for Indurad to be able to deliver value to a client?
It really depends on the scope of the project and the size of the project. Because we don't do just inventory management, in a lot of cases we use our 3D or our sensors to automate equipment. Typically, like if you're talking about stockpiles and inventory, we use our radar equipment to do collision avoidance and then automation of your stackers, reclaimers, your rail out facilities, and all of that. But so that's why I'm saying it depends on the scope of the project. But if I can maybe give you
Right.
an example, we've got a client where we installed a stockyard solution together with inventory management, and the entire um, stockyard solution took only 5 months. From that we received the PO until we handed over the project was a total of five months.
Wow. And if you say hand it over the project, is it typically something that you would have to maintain, ad infinitum for the client, or is this something that you install, implement, help the client to adopt, and then the client can manage and maintain and use thereafter themselves?
That's maybe an extremely good question because that talks again to the benefit of having an indirect solution. The first thing is we supply the technology, the knowledge, the know-how. We supply the information coming from the sensors in a filtered or rendered format via a telegram. But what we don't do is we don't do the actual automation of the equipment. We help with the process. We can handle turnkey projects, and we've done that a couple of times around the world. But we typically work with your either the local system integrator, which is of the preference or recommendation from the mine, or in some cases we also have mining clients where they have sufficient knowledge and expertise to do all of that automation work themselves, and then we would be helping them with that process. But once it's implemented, some of the advantage of the Interact solution is number one, we don't have any license fees, so no license fees for the client, no maintenance. Okay, once a sensor is installed, there's no recalibration required for a sensor. Okay, there's no cleaning required for the sensors because we can have typically 10 millimeters up to, let's say, 1 inch of material being built up onto our sensor. So there's actually, after it's been installed and it's commissioned and it works, okay, there's no need for us from an Indurat to keep that system running. But what we do is we do recommend to clients to typically have a service agreement where we would typically log in on a predetermined period to do a status check on the equipment. We also train the client themselves to do any first line fault finding, troubleshooting, and if there's any issues that they can then contact us for support and assistance. But normally, once it's given over to the client, they can carry on by themselves on our solution. They don't need a continuous um, involvement or intervention from our side.
All right. Okay. Well, Adriaan, we're running out of time. This conversation can carry on for much more time, but let's try and land this plane. Speaking of radar, so one thing that's always very interesting is when people want to know what's coming up down the pike. You've talked about the future of mining. What's in the future of Indurad? maybe as a or by way of closing this discussion.
Maybe I'm quite excited about our new range of radar sensors that will be coming out soon. We've also recently, or this year, we've been awarded the BHP Jansen potash mine contract for all of the proximity detection of underground mining equipment. And for that project, we will be launching our new IRTT, which stands for Indurad Radio Transmitter Tags, for that entire mine.
Hmm?
A lot of other things that we are also quite excited about is to support our clients a lot better, to address their questions, their needs. We've been putting global partnerships in place. So we've just finished with setting up all of our partnerships in Canada. So we've got companies, partner companies covering all the way from the east to the west coast. We're now replicating that to America and then also around the globe. We've also got already a lot of partnerships to really support and go out to be there with the clients and to help them see how we can actually help them to improve their operations.
You want to name drop some of those partners of yours?
Yes, more than welcome. Um, Typically, what some of the partnerships that we do, some of them we already have in place for many years, but that we've re-energized and put in a lot of focus. Again, is like Encompass, which is based in Vancouver, but they cover a lot of areas, not just British Columbia and BC. We've got Intrepid Group, which is based in Calgary, but they've also got offices in some of the other provinces like Saskatchewan, and then we've got Team Power Solutions, which is one of the youngest or the newest of our partners, also based in Saskatchewan, but they also cover 3 or 4 of the Canadian provinces. We've got Synergy Controls, and we've also got Group LD. Group LD specifically also focused more on the eastern side of Canada, Ontario, Quebec, and all of those areas.
Adriaan, it's been really interesting and all the best with this future push. Clearly, the company is doing well, and it's great seeing the explosion of technologies used for not only more productive work but also safer work in the industry out there. So as we finish our podcast, I always ask our guests, what's on your bedside table? What are you reading?
Okay, maybe just a few of the books that I've just recently finished that I would like to mention. MP, as you know, I'm an engineer coming from mines. Okay, I'm not a salesperson. So one of the things that I really enjoyed reading was Pitch Anything from Oren Clough. That's a recent book that I just finished, which for me was a really, really, really good book. Then, on a personal side, I actually also finished the book Skipping Adolescence from Brian Michael Stegner, which I can advise to any parent that have got young kids and kids entering um, the adult phase.
I was just going to say it's a bit late for you to start thinking about skipping adolescence now.
I've got still two teenagers at home, and we're quite involved with young people in the community. So I can definitely recommend this book to people. And then some of the other books that I'm currently reading is the 10 Laws of Trust, the Coaching Habit, because I'm personally extremely passionate about coaching and mentoring. It's been part of my responsibilities in Exaro and just working with young people around the world. I quite enjoy those conversations. They keep us also young and up to date with what's going on. Then I'm also busy with some personal books like God's Big Picture, and obviously I've got my Bible next to my table. And I'm not sure if podcast counts as books, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts.
only if you're going to say that you listen, religiously to the Mind War podcast.
We have to add that one obviously to the list. We can't skip that one. But I do listen to a lot of podcasts because of all my travels. I spend a lot of time in buses on the road within the air, and then I enjoy listening to Freak Economics, Common Sense from Dan Carlin, Hardcore History from Dan Carlin, and then just a lot of world news, just to stay up to date about what's going on and what's the latest sort of things happening around the globe.
Sounds great, Adriaan. Thanks a lot for spending time with us. It's always nice to have someone who has seen both sides of the coin, both in production and now in providing technology and solutions to mines. And all the best with Indurad and all of your partners and all the new and exciting endeavors for the next year.
Thank you, MP. It was really enjoyed having the conversation.